Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Omni Athlete. You're here because, like us, you believe that sport is a vehicle for elevating global consciousness, but you know that elevating consciousness through sport only matters if it actually helps you compete at your highest level. We created this show to empower your performance with the wisdom and techniques of the world's highest achieving mind, body, and spirit competitors. Okay, so today's guest is a former professional athlete, author, entrepreneur, and speaker who is on a mission to help other athletes learn the lessons their sport can teach them about life, success, and finding their purpose along the way. This deep passion for empowering the next generation of athletes to learn what the game can give them while they're giving their all to the game comes from the challenging journey it took him to become a professional athlete. Never the biggest or most talented, effort, energy, relentless persistence, and integrity were the foundation of his success. His journey to professional basketball took him from the ultra-competitive Washington Catholic Athletic Conference in high school to New York and California in college, to Japan, then back to Washington, D.C., and almost to Canada, before ultimately getting his shot as a professional basketball player in Tokyo. Along the way, he learned the transformative power of adversity as fuel for growth, experienced the pain of the business side of sport, and ultimately, the incredible fulfillment and joy of seeing his dreams become reality. It's my pleasure to introduce to Omni Athlete, Malcolm Lemmons. Welcome to the show, Malcolm.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, really excited to have you. There are a lot of different places we could start. I was actually, as I was just looking through your book, this quote jumped out at me, and I wanted to share it with you and kind of let you just kind of riff on it for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So towards the end of your book, talking about life overseas, you have this quote: "Life is never as bad as we make it seem most of the time. It really isn't. No matter what you go through, remember that." Tell me about that quote.
It's basically touching on perspective. I went through a lot of obstacles and through my journey to becoming a professional athlete, but I always thought to myself, you know what, life can be a lot worse than what I'm going through right now. I had a very supportive family. They supported my dreams through it all. I had a roof over my head. I was able to, support myself in different type of ways. So, even though I wasn't there yet, I still had a lot of things to be, grateful for. And I had that perspective all throughout that journey and try to keep that mindset through any obstacle that I went through, and still to this day.
Yeah. It's challenging for athletes, right? And I imagine that at times we take for granted, you know, uh, athletics sport, right? It teaches us so many different principles, but a lot of times we presume that it teaches us how to think about the world outside of sport, and it doesn't feel like that always happens.
Right. No, not really. I mean, a lot of athletes have tunnel vision on the game, and it's like you're so trained and focused on being the best athlete you can be that you don't really think about being the best individual that you can be. And that's something that I've been trying to reverse for a lot of athletes and change that stigma in the athletic community, because it's hindering a lot of athletes in various ways.
Like, what ways?
I just, in terms of transitioning into other careers, sports is a means to an end. You can't be an athlete forever, and you have to be able to be a holistic individual. You have to have other interests outside of the game because it doesn't last forever. And I think in that way, it's hindering athletes because they don't know who they are besides an athlete. And when you have that mindset that I'm only this one thing, when you try to identify as other things, you can't do it, and you struggle to find who you are. And I think that's the biggest challenge that athletes face when they're trying to transition.
Which is really challenging, right? Because and you even talk about this in your book, like to make it through a competitive high school environment, to make it to Division I college level, to make it to the professional level, you have to have tunnel vision. But at the same time, you have to remember that it won't last forever, like you just said. What were some of the things that you tried to do during that journey to really remind yourself, okay, like this is what I want right now, but there's something bigger happening?
Oh man, I mean, I struggle with it myself. So I think it's why I'm so passionate about helping other athletes.
Yeah.
You got to think about who you are outside of the game, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had other interests, other things that I liked.
Mhm.
But as far as my passion, it was basketball. And that's all. Like every day I woke up and I'm like, how can I be a better basketball player? I'm going to the gym, I'm working out, and everything was centered around that, especially when you get to the Division I level where it's like 24/7. And so it's like you don't even have time to think about it, but it's like you have to, because you're going to, no matter how long you play, you're going to struggle. That transition is going to be hard regardless. And it's going to be 10 times harder if you don't take that, that time to think about who you are and to try to figure out what else you like to do or love to do with your life.
It's such an interesting dynamic, right? Because one of the things that strikes me as really, I keep using the word challenging. There's probably a more specific word for it, but it's like, so you had this happen a couple of times where connection with the coach, right? You develop a relationship with the coach and then they're gone, right? Because they, got an opportunity somewhere else. And, like you're asked as an athlete, especially at these ultra high levels in college and professionally, to commit your entire life to it, knowing that at any time, the person you kind of expect to have the same level of commitment in your coach may not be there. That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, it's really tough. It was really just an eye-opening experience when I was going to college, and graduating from high school, going to college that next year, and my coach actually left, and he told me he wasn't going anywhere. So it was like somebody who I trusted in, who I thought was going to be my coach all 4 years in college. It didn't happen that way, and it really awakened me to the business side of basketball, and it was like you really people are going to look out for their best interests and do what is right for them. You got to do the same. And I tell a lot of athletes nowadays, younger athletes, that you can't pick a school based off of the coach. You have to pick a school based off of the school and, the academic experience that you're going to get there. Is it going to be a quality education? Are you actually going to, enjoy your time there, whether the coach is there or not? And that's the biggest thing I learned, was that I can't rely on a coaching staff to be there for me. I have to look out for me because they're going to do the same for them.
What, when that happened, especially the first time, right, as you were getting ready, as you graduate in high school and getting ready, what did you do with all the emotion that comes up right there? Because that's just brutal.
Just confusion.
Yeah.
That's really what it was. I had spent that whole senior year building that relationship with that coaching staff. And even I think maybe one or two coaches stayed, but I think two of them left. So it was like, I went there partially because I knew I was going to play under this coach. I liked his coaching style. I liked, what he was doing with the program. And when, you're 2 weeks away from graduating, and then you're on your way to summer school, and it's like, that's not going to be your coach. I didn't know what to do. I was confused. I was lost. And, my mom being a single parent who had no experience with recruiting or, didn't know anything about that side of basketball, didn't know what to do either. And I didn't really have a mentor to show me. So I kind of just had to figure that process on my own. And luckily I had Niagara, who stepped in and recruited me. But like I said, it was just really just, eye-opening experience. And it was like, I really have to understand all facets and really key in on the business side of sports, because that's a big part of it.
Do you feel like that influenced how you approached going into Niagara, knowing that, okay, and you even mentioned this in the book, that when the coaches came to you, later in your career and said, hey, we're not going anywhere, this isn't going to happen. Did you feel like after that first time it happened, did it make you angrier or feel a little bit more like you had to kind of, stay guarded as you went through college?
I think there was a level of understanding that it could happen again. It happened once, and I was just like, you know what, I just have to roll with the punches. And, if this is my dream, this is what I want to pursue, then I'm going to have to accept everything that comes along with it. And, my junior year, when the coaching staff left, I wasn't surprised that it happened. It was more so, okay, what's the next move? What do I need to do to achieve that dream that I had? Because I'm still staying focused on that, and I'm not going to rely on a coaching staff, especially a brand new coaching staff, to come in and be worried about my goal of being a professional athlete when they're worried about, their freshmen or sophomores that they're trying to groom it to build a better program. So that was a main reason why I ended up transferring, was that I didn't want to rely on a new coaching staff who didn't know me and I didn't know them. And I just did what I had to do, man. At the end of the day, that's just what it comes down to. If you want something, you're going to figure out how to get through the adversity and the obstacles, such as those situations.
Totally. So one of the consistent things that I think you try to coach other athletes through, and that screams out as I read your book, was just the shift in mindset that comes with wanting to experience success, right? And wanting to truly connect your success as an athlete to success in life. So what have been some of the major, just whether it's focusing on positivity, whether it's being able to really hold a vision of what you want to see come into reality, what are some of the big shifts in mindset that you've had as an athlete and that you try to coach other athletes through?
Man, it's so many, and I talk about a lot of the different things that I learned in the
Yeah.
book. I think one of the biggest things is patience for me because I'm
Mm.
becoming an entrepreneur. Um, nothing happens overnight, and I realize that's comparable in sports and life. Like if you want great things to happen, it takes time. It takes a high level of patience and understanding that you have to just put in the work, and it'll happen when the universe wants it to happen for you, not when you want it to happen for you. And
Yeah.
so that was a big key for me, just staying patient through it all and knowing my time is going to come. And then also just keeping that vision in my mind, like
Mhm.
you said, I think vision, having a clear vision and understanding of where you're trying to get to. It's like having, a address and a GPS. You
Yeah.
want to know where you're going before you want to have a path to how you're going to get somewhere, and the clearer your vision is, the easier it's going to be for you to actually manifest that dream in your head. So I think just having that goal of me playing professional, being a professional athlete was something I had, since I was young, and I stayed focused on that, and I would think about it all the time. And I think that's a large part to why it happened for me, because I stayed clear on that and didn't let anything stray me away from that goal.
What was it that kept you coming back to it, even in the moments that were super painful, when it felt like it had disappeared? Were there thoughts that you used in those moments to say, no, this is what I'm here to do. I'm gonna go see this through.
I think just pure passion.
Yeah.
I wanted it so badly, and I think I would reminisce and look back on the things that I went through to get to a certain point. And I'm like, I didn't come this far to just quit. I saw a lot of my friends who were way more talented than me. They had way more connections.
Mhm.
They were better basketball players, but they didn't go as far as I did. And I think partially because every athlete, of course, faces adversity, but it's just a matter of getting through those hard times. And people give up. People give up on their dreams because they feel like it's not going to happen, or they're doing all this in vain, and that it just may not, be their time or whatever. People give up on their dream for different reasons. I stay, focused on that, like I said, and just stayed consistent.
Yeah.
And it was just pure passion and drive.
Yeah. It's energizing because there were so many moments, it seemed like, where you could have made a different decision, right? Very easily, and would have had
Yeah.
every reason to, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and one of the reasons I ask, we're really on our lens of sport really is looking at not just the physical performance, right? But the mindset, the spiritual body that we have, the connection to the universe on a bigger scale. And I think moments like that illustrate a connection to something bigger than yourself. And
Right.
it's cool. I mean, where does that come from for you?
Just faith. I think, I come from a very faith-based family.
Yeah.
And my mom, she instilled that in me at a very young age, was just like, if you want something, pray for it, then go work
Mhm.
for it. It's really as simple as that. It's and so I like I said, I stayed focused and I had faith that it was going to happen. I trusted the process, and I talk about that in the book. Just trusting your journey, trust that the work that you're putting in, and the things that you're doing is going to map out to what you want in life. And that having that unwavering faith is just so important to me.
Can you reflect on a moment or two when you were playing where you dropped into the zone and what that felt like?
Oh, you mean physically, like in the
Yeah.
game?
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to say my junior year playing at Niagara, we were actually playing against University of Vermont. That was one of the schools that actually pursued me really hard
Mm.
when I was in high school, and I actually I originally was going to go there if I didn't commit to Robert Morris. So we were playing Vermont, and that was my highest scoring game in Niagara. I think I had 20 points, but I was just like in the zone. I think it was just because of the atmosphere, and it's just like
Mm.
I almost went to this school, so I was trying to show out, and it was just like I was balling, man. I was just
Yeah.
really on my game. And then probably my senior year playing at Cal State, we played UCLA, and that was when they had like Zach LaVine, Kyle Anderson, Tony Parker, so like 4 first round draft picks that year, and I had like 20 points against them, and I was just knocking down shots. So I think that zone, that I feel like Kobe Bryant talks about the zone a lot, and it's just that space where you're not thinking, you're just doing, and you that place of just zen where you just out there just doing your thing because you've done it so many times. You're just it's pure bliss, and I think that's the greatest feeling as an athlete is when you're just outperforming everybody and nobody can stop you because you're in the zone. So those are the two situations, or the two like games that I can really think of off the top of my head where I was just like unconscious and just balling.
Could you feel those coming before the games?
Actually, no, not that I remember. I think it's just when you're in it. I think as a basketball player, if you see a couple shots go in, and you're feeling good, it's like it just builds on top of that, and the rim just gets bigger. So I think that's what it was for me. But I didn't really. I don't feel like I felt it before the game. I'm trying to think about like my preparation before the game. I try to usually do the same things over and over so I can produce the same results.
Yeah.
But I think it's just something that you just get sometimes, man. I want to say, some athletes can just automatically put themselves in the zone, like guys like Kobe or LeBron. Like they probably have like methods to where they've done it so many times that they're just, they know how to do it. But I never could just like it wasn't automatic for me. It just happens sometimes. So
And it's so fascinating because the reason I ask, Malcolm, is because I think basketball especially is such an incredible sport because you're so close to the people you're playing with all through the game, right? I mean, you're right there in each other's face 24/7. There's not really this, there's not really a pause in the action. You're right there. And I wonder I remember before football games, right? There were certain games where I could feel teammates, or even in particular a couple games where I remember feeling our opponent and just knowing they're going to go off today. I can feel it, right? Like if we're not here, we're not ready. I can feel it. And I wonder, like, did you have games like that where you could just kind of say, maybe it was a teammate, or like they're dialed in today. I can feel it. They're ready.
Well, you know what? You actually reminded me of a time we were my senior year in college. We were playing against Fresno Pacific, a Division II school in Fresno, California. And the night before we had a walkthrough, and I was just knocking down shots. And one of my teammates was like, he told the coaches, he was like, Malcolm's going to go off tomorrow, because I just couldn't miss. And I didn't know if it was the rims or what the situation was, but I was just feeling good that night. And the next game I had 35 points and broke a couple school records actually. So that was one time where like it was the night before and I was feeling it, but I didn't really like, I didn't think about it. I just went out there and balled. So I think that was another time where I was in the zone and I was just hitting shots. So I think, man, it depends, especially with basketball.
It's awesome, dude. It's energizing to hear that, because when you reflect on those moments, right, it gives you that energy back too. You're like, oh my gosh, that was like, I can feel you right now lighting up thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you miss the game, when you love it so much, it's like, man, you look back on those moments, you'd be like, I wish I could recreate that.
Yeah. And I mean, do you think that's why for so many athletes the transition is so tough, is because moments like that where it truly is bliss, and then if you don't have anything else, it just disappears, right?
Absolutely. I definitely think that plays a part in it, because when you're an athlete, you're recognized by everybody. You have so much love and everybody's like, oh, you're this, you're that, you're great. It's the support is there. And then when you retire, that usually that all goes away. And I experienced that where my phone wasn't, blowing up as much. People aren't asking, to come to my games. My social media is not as, popping as it was before. So it's like, that is a hard transition. That is a hard thing to experience when you go from being the man to being, quote unquote regular. And it definitely plays a part in the transition and trying to, recreate that feeling or that experience that you had as an athlete is almost impossible to do. I want to say, there's very few careers that are like that. So it most certainly plays a part. And that's something that I went through as well.
Do you feel like writing, entrepreneurship, speaking, this opportunity to kind of blend more of the creative side of who you are, is that one of the reasons why you think that's become such a passion for you, is because it shares a little bit of that ability to create in the way that basketball does?
I definitely think, it's a similar thing. I've always been very entrepreneurial as a young kid, even though I didn't know what to call it. But I love to create. I draw when I was younger, and I used to do various things like that. So that ability to just to create in different ways and to put your work out into the world and kind of just like a show as an entertainer or something of that nature is definitely similar to what an athlete is. So I do see some similarities. And to me, writing, I never saw myself as an author or a writer. I never thought I would be, author or writer, but it's something that gives me that freedom of expression, a way where I can put out, my work to the world and help other people, provide some value to other people and help people learn from the things that I've been through. So, to me, that's really what it's about. And it's very, therapeutic method for me.
Therapeutic how?
Just allows me to release my thoughts, get them down on paper, put it out into the world, get feedback on it. And to hear people say like your work helped me. I get messages from former athletes or, people in the sports industry like, yo, this is really good. Like, I love this piece or I love this article. I liked your story, your book, hearing that feedback is just very, it's a wonderful feeling, to be honest. It's nothing like helping somebody else with something that they're struggling with and letting them know or them letting you know how much that meant to them. And for me, that's the best part of this all is just providing that value, providing that support and letting people know, I'm really here to help you, with your journey, with things that you may be experiencing in your athletic career or in your life.
Do you find that as your reach grows, as more people learn about your story, are athletes going through a lot of the same struggles that you went through? And are the athletes that you're working with that either have reached out to you, have read your book, have listened to your podcast, or really connecting with you, are they going, oh, this isn't just me, like this is actually something that we go through? What's that kind of communication been like?
Yeah, I think athletes, some have reached out to me and told me they've experienced some of the things that I've been through. I think that's something that we're kind of at the forefront of, and a lot of athletes aren't really comfortable yet kind of going to somebody else and talking about their struggles, because we have this persona as an athlete where we're supposed to be, mentally tough, physically strong, or we're not supposed to show any weaknesses. Right. When to me, vulnerability is the key in life, because it gives you a chance. It gives you that freedom of expression, a freedom to, to me, it's more courageous than anything, because you're telling somebody your weaknesses and everything that you've been through, and you're giving somebody else the courage to do the same thing. And that's how we connect as people. And for me, athletes have come to me and talked about some of their experiences, but a lot of my friends, a lot of the people that I'm close to are still playing. So, maybe 5 years down the line when I'm, still doing this work, and they're on the brink of retiring from whatever sport they're playing, they may come to me and ask for help. And that's what I want them to do, which is why I put my work out. It's like, if you are going through these things or, maybe going through it in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to me, because I'm genuinely here to help, and I know how hard it can be.
How does vulnerability show up in sport?
That's a great question. I think we're starting to see a lot more of it, especially when you have guys like Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan talking about their mental health issues. I think we're just at the beginning of this being, revolutionary, to be honest. It's going to be a big change that, a lot of guys are going to, they're going to want, having that mental health support, even something that it's abstract, you can't see it, but it's real. And a lot of people go through these issues. So we have to have a better, understanding that, athletes are humans too. And that vulnerability, the more we talk about, our struggles, our experiences, and show that we're people just like anybody else, the more people are going to, be vulnerable, going to, talk about their obstacles and their struggles. And, it's going to do a justice to the world, and we're going to be able to help more people with these, things that they may be struggling with.
Did you, and this is, I was just reading about diving a little bit deeper into Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan and some of just the incredible work they're doing and the vulnerability that they're showing, right? And what I'm super curious to know more about is just like, so when you were playing at Niagara, did you guys talk about mental health at all? Was that a consideration? Did any teammates ever go, man, was depression, bipolar, borderline? I mean, were any of these words used? Anxiety? I mean,
Not that I ever remember. To be honest, I don't even think I even said the word mental health until I left, overseas. Like I don't
Mhm.
even like it's something that just didn't occur to me. Like
Yeah.
and I experience, mental health issues. Like I go through things. I had moments where I was, depressed and, I had different things going on in my life. And, we can't just sit back and not talk about them. And I think that's been the issue for all these years is that we're not talking about these problems and everybody is going through them. So it's like, why is it this stigma? Even just because you're an athlete, we have to be able to talk about them. And like I said, we're just at the beginning. And I think more, institutions and universities are starting to implement programs because they're understanding how big of an issue this is. But, it wasn't talked about. None of my teammates came to me, even though you may see signs, it wasn't like, oh, yeah, man, I'm depressed or, I suffer from bipolar disorder. Da, da, da. Like that was a no. And it's probably still, something that a lot of people aren't, a lot of athletes aren't going to be comfortable talking with. And that's just the sad truth. But guys are starting to realize, you can't hide behind these facades and these walls where you're not talking about your struggles because we all go through them.
Right. And what seems so powerful that you already pointed to, right, is when we give ourselves permission to be that vulnerable, something really powerful shifts for us too, right? I mean, we now can, and vulnerability, I would imagine, sometimes shows up in the moment of just, you know, hey, let's be in this moment together. And when you're on the court and that vulnerability of saying like, I'm going to put everything out here and I expect you to do the same. We use words, I think very often in locker rooms and in teams like respect and trust, but vulnerability is just the same part of it, right? It's really saying, this is who I am. I'm going to show you everything. And if that shows up on the court, I expect you to do the same.
Right. And I think that creates a deeper connection with your teammates. When you kind of put all your flaws out there and
Yeah.
you're just like, out there raw and this is me, this is who I am, that creates such an emotional connection, such a deep connection with another person that it's like it's gonna make you better teammates.
Yeah.
It's gonna make you better teammates. You know somebody to where like they're your family. Like we talk about family in locker rooms, but families talk about their issues.
Right.
Families talk about their struggles and the things that they go through. So if you got to be comfortable, expressing yourself with your team if that's your family. You got to be able to talk to them about anything, and that's going to make you more a cohesive group, and in most cases, perform better on the court or on the field, in my opinion.
Totally. And I'm sure you had games because I think we all do as athletes, right? Where I can remember, so my background primarily is martial arts, right? And I can remember many fights that I went into where my brain was just, there were loops in my head playing of thoughts of either past fights that hadn't gone the way I wanted it to, or just any number of kind of, emotional baggage I was carrying with me that day. And had I think felt comfortable enough to talk about it with the people around me, it would have been a much
Mhm.
different situation. And I'm sure you had games like that, right? Where there was just, even if it's just family stuff that's going through your head, you can't separate it when you step on the court. And so to not be able to talk about it, it's like you're trying to play with half of you sitting in the stands.
Absolutely, absolutely agree with that. Because we, as a college athlete, you're juggling so many different things. Like you said, you may have family issues, may have girlfriend issues.
Yeah.
Like carrying that onto the court it's not helping you. Even though a lot of athletes look as at the game as an escape or like
Right.
a way they could just kind of just be out there and not think about anything. I did that for years, and there are problems. Some of them don't go away unless you talk about them, unless you face them head on and address them accordingly. So, I definitely agree that, even though, the court of the field might be a sanctuary for you, sometimes when you step off, you're still dealing with the same problem.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to talk to somebody about them or, deal with them in the way that you need to deal with them because, it's just going to, bog you down. You're going to have more problems. They're going to compile over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's a little bit of a left turn, but I'm super curious. Playing in Japan, right? And what was that like? I know you had two different stints there. So what was and you talked about this a little bit, but I would just love for you to share like the culture difference, right, around sport. So was that, and what were what were the fans and teammates that you had? What was their relationship to basketball compared to what it's like here in the States?
So basketball in Japan is definitely a growing sport. I would say in China it's much bigger, but in Japan it's probably the fourth or fifth biggest sport. So Me playing in Tokyo my second year, we really my home games were almost empty because you're in a big city. People have
Yeah.
other things they could be doing with their time. Not they don't have to go to a basketball game, especially to a team that's subpar. We weren't that good, so that's kind of what the experience was like for me. But when we would travel to a smaller town where um, you know they didn't have anything else to do, so it was like everybody went to the game and they were just packed games. It was a way better experience when it came to just being on the court. But it was overall, it was a good experience. I learned a lot about the Japanese culture. The people were very nice. It was vastly different from America, but I definitely loved it over there, and living in Tokyo was an experience I wouldn't trade for the world.
Different in what way?
Oh man, I would say Tokyo or Japan in general is a lot cleaner. They're a very healthy culture, very efficient, time efficient.
Mm.
Everything is like everything is timely. Like they're always on time. I really enjoyed the food. It was just overall just a really good experience. Just living in a different place. Not I wasn't visiting. I was living there, so I had to adjust to little things that I had been accustomed to doing my whole life. Living in a smaller space, a smaller apartment. Walking more. Sitting on the floor and taking off my shoes when I walked into to people's houses, like little things like that you have to readjust to when you move into a different culture. But you learn to respect that culture. You learn to appreciate where you come from at the same time. And being in Japan, Asian culture to me is way different in those aspects. So it was something that I really valued and that I respected about them.
Did those little moments of, growth, right? These little moments where you had to kind of say, okay, this is not something I'm used to doing and I got to learn how to do it right now. Do you feel like that showed up on the court, either in the mindset that you brought to the game when you were there, or just in, how did that transition to you playing?
I think the biggest challenge on the court was the language barrier. So
Mm.
for me and my teammates, I played with two other Americans and the rest of the team was Japanese, and none of them spoke English. So you're having to you playing basketball where there's always a lot of communication going on, and they understand the game, but trying to communicate little things that you want to say, or trying to get across plays, or where what you want them to do was very difficult. So we had to figure out different ways of how to become a better team through that lack of communication, which was a very, very hard struggle. So that was the biggest thing for me. Was definitely just the language barrier, and trying to get us on the same page. And I think that added into why we weren't as good of a team as we could have been. It wasn't really the talent, but it was more so that cohesiveness that I talked about earlier, and us being on the same page and understanding each other's game and how we played. And that was just it was very difficult to do, especially in a place where we had 7 Japanese rookies on our team, so a lot of young guys at the same time. So it was definitely a challenge in those aspects on the court, more so than anything else.
It's super interesting is we take for granted often the role communication play in sport, right? I mean, so not just, not just the verbal communication, but the body language, all these different pieces. I would imagine there were, so one, you don't have words, right? You can't use that language that you're used to, but I'm sure there's other challenges too with just the body language that gets exhibited by different players from different cultures, right? I mean, it's just a totally different platform of communication.
Right. So I think in America, we don't. I want to say body language is important, but it can be interpreted in different ways in different cultures. So showing certain signs of a negative attitude, that's not going to go well in Japanese culture, or certain things that you do is not going to be interpreted the same way it would be in America. So that was another thing we really had to take into account, was like even little things that we did with our hands or hand signals or anything of that nature is like they may not understand it the same way that we do. So we have to be cautious about how we communicate our body language, our hand signals, our facial expressions, like things of that nature that you don't really think about. It's different in other cultures, and that's another part of the culture shock when you go play overseas. It's like you've been doing something for so long, and you have to go over here and not do it. it's hard, in that aspect. So that was difficult. That was a challenge for me on the court.
It's really interesting to consider too the way that something like that having to make, again, these little micro changes, right? That are maybe, the individual change is not that giant, but when you step back and look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, I had to learn practically a new language over the course of that, literally and figuratively, right? And I
Yeah.
wonder, like as an athlete that now comes back and says, okay, how do I map all the skills that I've learned through sport to doing something really passion filled in my life? I have to imagine those little moments, they add up, right? Those little pieces of the puzzle that you've had to practice and train with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think, understanding all the lessons that you take away from the sport, which is why I call the book Lessons from the Game, because it's applying years and years of things that you may not, consciously think but you do know. It's understanding how to transition or transfer all of those skills, those lessons, those traits that you gain as an athlete and applying those to whatever you want to do next in life. And small things like you said, the time efficiency, being on time, something as little as that to, you know, being consistent, disciplined, persistent, like all these little things that you gain as an athlete that you may not understand are valuable traits and skills in the real world. And when you learn how to apply those things in other areas of life, you can be just as successful as you were as an athlete in whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's incredible. And it is a really worthwhile pursuit to want to empower more people to experience that as athletes, right? Because I'm sure, like we we get done performing in something that we're used to performing in, and we are so easily willing to kind of close the book on all of it and not just
Mhm.
close the book on the part of it that is me performing at a certain time, right? But not, but be able to pull from it. Oh, when this happened, I did this, right? When a teammate went off on me for something, instead of getting back in his face, I did this. Or, when something didn't go the way I wanted it to, I showed up the next day anyway because I wanted this dream to come true so bad, or whatever it is, right? Like, uh, it's those moments are so much the beauty of sport.
Absolutely. Those are all valuable situations and experiences that you've been through that can be applied in other areas of life. And I actually, a side note, I got my first job and I didn't have any work experience, but all I did was talk about how I related my skills or my experiences as an athlete to, that job position, or, how I could apply this to working in this position. And the employers, they saw that and they hired me over five other candidates who had work experience, but more experience than I did, because I was able to tell a story and talk about, how what did me being an athlete and how do those experiences, what did that teach me about the real world? What did that teach me that's going to help me in this next career that I'm about to embark on? And that is the whole crutch. That is the whole foundation of being an athlete, is understanding what this is going to do for your life and how you're able to use what you learn and transfer that over into whatever you want to do, because sports teaches you so much and can help you in so many different ways that you may not even realize initially.
Do you feel like playing as long as you did, as competitively as you did, made you a better storyteller?
Definitely gave me more stories. I wouldn't say a better storyteller per se. I'm still working on being a better storyteller every day, because I think that is where the connection is with people. When you can tell a great story, it's everything. So, that's what we grew up on. We grew up hearing, stories like Rudy and the Hoosiers and all these, wonderful stories, movies and books. Like, that's how we connect as people. That's how we learn. And, me practicing my storytelling abilities and wanting to get better at that is just, it's very important to me. So I don't think it necessarily made me a better storyteller, but it gave me more things to talk about, more experiences to touch on and to provide to people in the world. So.
Love it. And the reason I ask is because I think for young athletes that are that want to look at sport as kind of a path, right? I think one of the things that is so incredible, Malcolm, about the work that you're doing is that you really lay out this can be a path. It doesn't just have to be, so it's a passion, but it also can be a path to something, right? It doesn't have to be just a passion with no real value beyond the thing that it is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I just, more athletes, especially young athletes, I think need to hear that story from somebody like you who's done it and said, this is incredible. And it doesn't have to stop. Like the value that I got from basketball doesn't stop because I'm not on the court anymore. I have these stories to reference when I want to be out in the world.
Yeah, and I say all the time that I'm not in the business of killing dreams. Like I don't ever want to tell an athlete not to, pursue their dream of being a college athlete or a professional athlete. Like I never, because no one, I would never want somebody to do that to me. But what I do try to instill is that even though you may want this, it always is a path to it. It's not, it can be, it's going to be a path because you have to stop playing one day. So it's like, and the more that you figure out who you are, what else you love, the easier it's going to be once you're done. Like look at Kobe, he started preparing for his transition years before, even nobody probably knew or heard about it. Now he's into writing and producing and content production. Like he found something else that he loved to do just as much as basketball. And he's having, an insurmountable success already with what he's doing. But, even guys like that, you look at Kobe, you look at LeBron, and those are just like a couple of the names that come to mind. But these are guys who are preparing for now or before their career is over for that transition. And if they have to do it, and these are the mega superstars of our generation, you have to do it too. And that's what I try to instill in a lot of guys is like, that it's going to end. Understand that that's a part of this process. Chase the dream, but always know what you want next.
What is the role of a coach in helping to prepare us for that next step?
I think a coach is definitely, for me, I ran into a lot of problems with a lot of my coaches, but I always feel like a coach is supposed to be that leader, that driving force behind an athlete, no matter if this is the last person on the bench or, your best player on your team. Like you're building a person, you're building an individual, you're teaching lessons and skills and things that are going to be applied 20 years into their lives. So I think, coming from the situations that I have, I didn't have, in my opinion, the best of coaches. I clashed with my coaches, but I still learned a lot and took a lot from the various coaches that I played for. But the coach is definitely the foundation for success in a lot of young men's lives. And I think we definitely need coaches to not just instill, athletic skills, but people skills and teaching them about life, not just the game that they play.
Yeah, well said. Wow. So, Malcolm, this has been absolutely incredible, man. Before I ask my final question, where can these guys go to connect with you online?
Thank you for having me first and foremost, but they can connect with me on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook at Malcolm Lemmons. That's MalcolmLemmons. They can also check out my website at www.malcolmlemmons.com.
Awesome. Okay. So the final question, this show is called Omni Athlete because we want to understand what it takes to be the ultimate mind, body, and spirit competitor. And so the last question is, what does being an Omni Athlete mean to you?
Oh, man. Great question. It means being holistic, being a competitor, being dedicated to your craft, but understanding there's always life after sports and honing in on your individualistic talents, skills to have success in and out of sports.
Well said. Yeah. Wow. Guys, holy cow, Malcolm, thank you for coming on the show, man. So guys, when you consider sport, we so often talk about performance, right? We so often talk about how do we get better as an athlete or as a coach. What we don't yet talk enough about, and what somebody like Malcolm is doing and showing you right now, is that there are so many lessons you can pull from the sports that we're playing, that we're loving and competing in, that not only apply to life, but apply to finding passion in anything that you're doing, right? You can create, if not the same, at least a similar level of energy and passion once you're done playing, once you're done competing, regardless of what level you're at. So when you go and dive into Malcolm's world, you are going to realize so fast that if you step back and have awareness towards what we experience as athletes and coaches, you are learning constantly. Grab Malcolm's book, go on his website, consume the content he's putting out there and the stories that he's sharing, because he's lived it, right? He's lived and breathed the fact that these lessons apply not just to who we are as athletes or who we want our athletes to be as coaches, but as people. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do anyways, to be better people and to experience that through sports. So go check out every single bit of content that Malcolm is putting out there, connect with him. And until next time, guys, thank you for watching this episode of Omni Athlete. Hey, what is up, guys? Thank you for watching another episode of Omni Athlete. Please go like and subscribe to our podcast. That is our goal right now, is just to build this community as big as we possibly can, and we need your help to do it. So like and subscribe, share our content, guys. If this content adds any value to your world, that helps you perform, connect, go deeper, go wider, whatever it is that it does for you, if it provides value, all we ask is that you share our content and help grow this community. We can't accomplish our goal of elevating global consciousness through sport without you. You are an integral part of this mission and this purpose, and we need your help. So please go like, subscribe, and share our content, and continue to help us build and grow this community that is truly motivated to not just elevate consciousness, but elevate and shift the very culture of sport, so that we can truly experience the athletic experience in a brand new and energizing way for so many people, guys. So thank you, and please like and subscribe. Until next time.